Hello, everybody out there. Hello, Lisa. I'm very happy you made it today, that we finally
Hi,
are
hi
online
everyone.
together. Yes,
Yeah,
sorry,
that's good.
your room. Yeah, Lisa Boswell is here with me tonight, so people are still trying to find us, I guess. And I met Lisa in 2017 in Birmingham at the Tabby conference. And I remember you were talking about symbols in tarot.
Yeah, I was talking about Gypsy
No, no
Fortune
more. Sorry,
and oh, what?
I'm shutting up. You tell
All
me.
right. All right. I thought there was something wrong. I was like, what's going on?
No, no.
I was talking about Gypsy fortune telling and symbolism, and I was giving my talk at the Tabby conference, and that's how we met.
Exactly. And you're situated in Scotland now. I just learned near Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And you have been since then, since 2017. I followed you. I read your newsletter regularly. And I think you do a great job. And you have, from my perspective, developed so much during these past 3 years. And what I really appreciate about your newsletters and also the videos you show at times is that you share so much with other people, and that you're very open about your own mistakes and the way you came into what you are right now. And the German people, I think, don't know you so much. So I thought perhaps you tell them a bit about how you came to be you're not a tarot reader, but basically a fortune teller.
I read tarot as well, so
I
I
know,
call
but
myself a fortune
you
teller.
don't
But
say you don't say I'm a tarot reader. You say I'm a fortune teller
yeah,
expert,
yeah,
and you say
yeah. I would just say whatever. Usually, sometimes it's quite hard to explain because sometimes you meet different people and they don't really know what tarot is or whatever. So I just got into the habit of telling them that I was a fortune teller. And then that's it. They just assume whatever it is that I do. And then that's basically what I do. So, yeah.
yeah. Though I have to say that I don't know many people in my surroundings. As you know, I am the head of the German Tarot Association. I think not many people there would call themselves fortune tellers, or would say, like you say, I'm doing a predictive tarot or predictive readings. I think this is very daring.
I think that I tend to find that I get a lot of messages from people who said that they've been sort of under the pressure not to call themselves that, but that's what they consider themselves to be. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes I think that it is social pressure, sometimes from other readers. Whereas I think that the general public, they don't really care as much about things like that. Do you know what I mean? About what we call ourselves. They're like, just give me a reading.
So many people I know say, oh, I'm a psychologistic reader. I do psychological tarot or psychological astrology or whatever. What would you say would be the difference between fortune telling and psychologically doing readings?
To be completely honest with you, and this is going to surprise you, to be completely honest with you, I don't really think there is much difference.
Doesn't surprise me.
I don't think there is much difference. I think that that's just the way that people like to think of themselves or maybe like market themselves and things. But I think that people often have a lot of assumptions about predictive readings, which is just completely not true. Do you know what I mean? And like, say, for example, people seem to think that predictive readers don't give advice for some reason. I don't really understand why it is that people think that, but people tend to think that. Whereas, and I think that even in like psychological readings, you have to do some sort of prediction to be able to give someone advice. Do you know what I mean? People are predicting everything every day, all the time. Do you know what I mean? So I don't
When
think.
will Corona finish? We have loads of people telling us about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that there is. I don't think there's much difference.
Yeah. I totally agree. Marion is watching and saying, I don't know whether you can see the comments as well.
No.
Marion mentions somebody from the German Tarot Association, El Fantadou, who died a few years ago, and he had a caravan and went on fairs and markets, and he always was dressed in a fortune teller's dress. So yes, this was our one exotic fortune teller in our association, but he's no longer here. That's just to say what Marion says. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I myself wouldn't call myself a psychological reader. I don't know whether I'm a fortune teller, but I told you before we went online that 12 years ago, we were publishing a book about cards, and I wasn't allowed to write the word Wahrsagekarten, which means fortune-telling cards. But nowadays, 12 years later, this term is totally okay for some strange reason. And perhaps what you're saying is that we do all the same, but the words change, or what do you think?
I think that sometimes I think it's to do with like fads. I don't know if you know what that means, like fashions. Do you know what I mean? There's certain terms that come in and out of fashion. And I think that when even like say like about 8 years ago, that's when I first like came online with my readings and stuff, was maybe about 8 years ago. And that's when because I hadn't realised that it was a thing, that people were as bothered about it until like I came online or whatever. And then I think that people just went through this stage of, they thought that that was the right way to like legitimize tarot, was to get rid of like certain words or things like that. But if anything, I actually think that it does more harm to the industry, because people, a lot of the general public don't really know what tarot is, or understands its benefits, or understands what readers do and things. And I think that trying to add that pressure to educate people in that way can really maybe cause more confusion than what it does actually cause help to help the industry or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Perhaps because due to the internet, things have changed, because people are less bothered about whether we are doing psychological stuff or whether we are just predicting or whatever it could be. But 8 years ago you started. I didn't know this.
No, I came online with my business like 8 years ago.
And before you already did also.
I had performed readings and stuff, but I wasn't doing it, not to the extent that I was when I started like coming online and stuff. That's when I'd really started my business as it is now, basically, back then.
But in 2017, you were not so very well, from a German perspective. I don't know how it was in Britain. I know you have received an award. I don't know what award.
Yeah, I got my Tarosophy Award in 2014, I think it was.
So just basically after you came out with your business, a year or two after?
Yeah.
And what for?
I started my blog in 2014. So I had a blog and I'd started that in 2014, and a lot of people read it, and that's when they had because you had to vote for people to be the Young Tarot Officers. You had to like tell them, who do you think should win this award? And so because a lot of the members had said that I should have won it, that's how I ended up winning the award, basically.
It's totally cool. I never had an award. I would want one. We should have the Oscars of tarot readers.
This sounds really strange, right? But when I was younger, because I've been fortune telling like my entire life and stuff, and in the UK we have this we have these magazines. One of them's called Spirit and Destiny, and another one's called Spirit and Soul. And I used to read them, and they used to have readers in there who had won awards. It would always mention this psychic has won this award, or this whatever astrologer has won this award. And I used to read that magazine, and I used to think to myself, they people must be living these like amazing lives. They must be like huge readers who are doing all this stuff. And when I won my award, I was like, I'm just a normal person. Like, you know what I mean? So I think, yeah.
Well, you are not very up your nose, so to speak. You are very...
No, I don't. I think that maybe I did think that before I'd actually won my award. I thought that people that had those awards has achieved like all these great things and stuff like that, but they're honestly just normal people.
Yeah, of course. But did this award help you in promoting your business, in being more seen or something like this?
I think that in some ways, I think that maybe it sort of helped to legitimize it when I started teaching, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? So when I had, by the time about 2017, that's when I'd started running courses and things like that. And I think that because I had won the award a couple of years before it, that had sort of, it gave me like that extra credibility, if you know what I mean. But it wasn't like it changed my life overnight. Do you know what I mean? It didn't like, and to be honest, with my like reading business, I don't really think it had that much of an effect on it. Like I didn't notice that I'd started making more money after it or that. But I do think that when I'd started teaching, it did give me a bit more like legitimacy in that way as well.
And since 8 years, you have been a full-time reader and teacher then?
Yeah. 8 years.
Wow. That's really impressive. And I read on your homepage, which is very lovely. You changed it some time ago, right? It's new.
Yeah, I did. That was just for technical reasons. It was because my original website was built on a platform called Squarespace, and my website is like one of their most visited websites, and then it just started to have all this bother because of the amount of traffic and things, so I had to like move my website over to like a WordPress website, which is it is an alright problem to have, but it's really was like a big strain at the time.
Yeah, I think I read the newsletter where you were going on about what a hassle it is to do this.
Because my Squarespace is quite good for building websites, but my Squarespace website gets like 1.3 million visitors a year. So it was really, because of that amount of visitors, it causes the site to slow and stuff like that. So then I had to move to WordPress so I could get like a really good like external host that could cope with the amount of visitors and stuff.
That's really amazing. So many people. How do you do this?
So what had happened was that before I'd built divination and fortune telling, over the years I had ran like different blogs and things. So I became really good at like optimizing my posts and getting my posts shared and things like that. So then when I built divination and fortune telling, I sort of knew what to do with in terms to like ranking on Google, getting my posts shared and stuff like that, building an audience and things. And within, I think it was the first 11 months, within the first 11 months of building the website, I had about 100,000 visitors a month. So it did take off like really, really quickly. And when I'd actually done my talk for Tabby, that was the year that I had started that website. So I'd only started that particular website a couple of months before I'd done the presentation for Tabby. And
these about 1 million people, they also get in touch with you, or is it more that they're...
Some of them do. A lot of them are like my students now. So say they'll come along and they'll buy like my ebooks or sign up to my newsletter. That's a big thing. I have like a lot of like newsletter subscribers and stuff.
Yeah.
So they'll like
very good with newsletter writing. I hate writing newsletters. You do such a good job with this.
Here's the thing, right, is that people hate doing things like that, right? But and sometimes I actually think that it comes down to like a bit of a fear. Do you know what I mean? Some people are even like that with giving readings, like they fear giving readings or whatever. And no, people don't like what they're not used to. Do you know what I mean by that? People don't enjoy it if they're not used to doing it. And if you get into the groove of like writing your newsletters and stuff, and you make it like, say, a weekly thing or whatever, it just becomes so much easier, because it's something you get over that block of not liking doing it by just doing it. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's the same as well, is that I get a lot of like my students, they'll be so scared to read tarot, right? I once had a student who, she wouldn't even read tarot, right, if there was someone else in the house. I don't know why, right? She was that self-conscious, right? She wouldn't read tarot if there was someone else in the house. And I used to say to her, right, she'd say, how can I get to the point that I can read other people? And I'm like, I think she wanted some sort of like hack, or like me to say, right, here's some tips and things. And I just say to her, listen, the only way to get over it is to do it. That's the only way. There's no one coming to save you. There's no special hack of getting around it. You get used to it by doing it, and doing it like consistently. And that's the only way to do it, basically. Because even though like I've been performing readings my entire life, basically, I first discovered tarot when I was like 7 years old. And if anybody's wondering, it's because my family are Romani gypsies, and a lot of people in my family were fortune tellers and stuff. And when my older sister, when she was younger, she asked my mum for a tarot deck, and my mum bought it for her. And then I think the novelty with my sister sort of wore off, and then she just started leaving her deck lying around the house. But I was like really into it, right? Yeah, that sounds so strange, right? And I talk to a lot of readers who have a similar experience.
Yeah, same with my husband. Yeah, just go on. Sorry.
I felt the deck like calling me out, and the deck was like, touch me, like read with me, like, do you know what I mean? And that's how and after that I just became really, really obsessed. But even at that, when I started like charging for readings when I was in my 20s, I would panic before every single reading. And because I had all of this like experience, I felt so weird even telling people that. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't, like, if I would tell my mum, I'd say, Mum, I'm having this problem. Like, I'm like so self-conscious. And she would say, why are you worried about that? You've been reading forever. And I'm like, I don't know, help me. Do you know what I mean? And the only thing that actually helped me was performing professional readings and performing a lot of them. And then that's when I'd sort of gained the confidence to keep on doing it. Do you know what I mean?
So was it your intention when you started thinking about a career to become a fortune teller, or was this more...
This sounds really strange, right? But from when I was a child, I never thought about what career I would have. For some strange reason, I never used to. I just sort of had this whole, and my family used to ask me all the time. They'd say, oh, well, what do you want to do when you're older? And my sisters would all have their plan. You know, they're, oh, I'll be a vet, I'll be a nurse, I'll be this, I'll be that. And my sisters are actually nurses now. But I never, ever, I was just under this impression that it would come to me that I would just fall into the right place. And I know that sounds so bizarre because everybody has like their dream career or everything, but I just always thought that it would just fall on my lap. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, same with me. It took me ages to decide what I wanted to be. Though I have to say, I didn't want to become a tarot reader. I find this still very bizarre that I ended up where I am now. How was it with you? How did you decide on doing this then and writing a blog?
Well, what happened was that I had my daughter when I was only 15, when I was still at school. And I went back to school for a wee while because I was still under the age that I had to go back to school. So I did go back to school for a little while. But I'd always really struggled in school. I was like really, I have like a lot of like learning disabilities and stuff like that. So I always hated it, and it was really, really hard for me. So I never really got like amazing qualifications or anything like that. And then when I'd left school, by the time I'd left school and stuff, there was a recession going on. And so this is like 2006, like 2007 type thing. That's when the recession was really like kicking in.
Yeah.
And I never had any like work experience or anything like that. I never had like a really good education or anything like that. And I was like constantly, and I mean constantly, applying for jobs and never getting them, right? Couldn't even get an interview. And that went on for years. And it wasn't even just that. It was that even if I couldn't afford a computer, right? I was like couldn't even afford a computer. So I used to go down to the library to apply for jobs. And on my way down to the library, things always went wrong. My library card would disappear out my pocket. I'd go to sign on to the computer and it would stop working. I'd try to print off an application, it wouldn't print. But this was constantly any time that I'd try to apply for like a job, which was every day, right? And I used to cry to my mum and my granny, and I used to say, like, why is it that I can't get this job? And they used to always say to me, they'd be like, this isn't meant to be for you. They're like, there's something that's meant to be for you, and it's something big. They're like, one day you're going to be in a big job, you're going to have, like, you're going to love it and everything. And I would just be like, how is having a job not meant to be for me? Do you know what I mean? So it was just so bizarre. So one day I was lying in my bed and I was just so fed up, right? Absolutely fed up. And I was just like, I need a sign. Someone send me a sign. You know what I mean? Just, I need a sign. What have I to do? Because I didn't know what to do about this whole like job situation. And this had went on for years. So by this time, I'm like 23 or something. Do you know what I mean? I'd went a long time since leaving school and not having this job. So I'd went down to the job centre. And I was adamant that my appointment was at like 10:30 or something. And they're like, no, your appointment's at 11 o'clock. So I was like, right, what will I do? So I went to the library. And when I was in the library, there was a book that was just sort of, it caught my eye. And usually I don't like to read books by like other psychics or anything like that. I find it a bit boring. But this book was just like screaming at me, like calling at me, like, read me, take me away. And I was actually trying to walk away from it. And I just had this like burning inside me, like, I need to read that book. So then I went and took the book. It was called An Angel Called My Name. I went and took the book and brought it home, and it was filled with true stories. And when I opened the book and started reading, the woman in the book had the exact same similar situation to what I was in. She was like raised with these psychics in her family. She'd always loved like the whole psychic development and stuff like that. But she tried to go away and get a real job. And for years, she couldn't get a real job until she decided to go into the spiritual industry. And she'd actually applied for a job in the spiritual industry as an editor, and then she got it. And now she's actually quite a famous, in Britain, she's quite a famous writer on like spiritual matters and things like that.
What's her name? And
her name is Teresa Chung, and the book is called An Angel Called My Name.
Okay, An Angel Called My Name. Interesting.
Yeah, so after reading this book, her situation was like dead on, exact same as mine. And I actually couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this woman's situation is the same as mine. So that inspired me. I says, I'm going to start charging for readings. And I decided to become a professional reader. And then that was it. And it seemed like after I became a professional reader, all of those roadblocks sort of disappeared. Do you know what I mean? Like the card stopped disappearing out my pocket. Things started to actually go right. It wasn't like there was all these blocks in the way. And my mum and my granny, even now, they'll say things like, told you, like, we told you that you were going to have like that. There was something, do you know what I mean? There was something there like for you and things. And I actually think back and I think, wow, what would have happened if I would have like got that job in McDonald's or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like life would be completely different now.
So would you say one needs a calling to become a tarot or reader?
I would definitely say that it is. I would definitely say I don't really know, you know what, right? I'm not going to sit and like pretend that I know why that is or whatever, but I do feel that for some people it definitely is. It's like, and I think that some people, and I'd published a blog post before where I'd told like my story and things about how I became a reader. And the amount of people that had messaged me and said, you know what, same thing happens to me. I'm in the exact same situation. Something similar had happened to me. Like the amount of readers that they had all these issues or whatever. And then when they became readers, they stopped feeling like blocked in that way. Do you know what I mean? So I do definitely think that there is something in it. I don't know why that is. But for some people, that's just the way that it is, I think.
Yeah, it started for me, not as dramatic as for you, but I came upon a book and I got really hooked with the book. And I started, was given some cards by somebody. And after this, I was hooked. Interesting. Yeah. I like this. So this is one thing because we wanted to talk about how to build a tarot business. You should really have a passion for it, I guess, right?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I'd actually went and one of the things that really inspired me to go into like teaching business and stuff was that when I came into the tarot industry and then I'd like came online and I joined all these Facebook groups and stuff like that. And I'd noticed in the Facebook groups that there was this pressure to be like taken seriously for whatever reason. And I actually had people say things to me like, oh, you should get like a degree in history if you want to be taken seriously in like the industry and stuff like that. And I just couldn't really relate to anybody else that was successful, if you know what I mean by that, because they seem to have all these things going for them that I didn't necessarily have. Do you know what I mean? And even like, or they'd had experience in like their like corporate jobs, or you know, they just had all this experience before they'd even started their businesses. And that was totally not like me. I had like no like business experience whatsoever. Do you know what I mean? No like academic experience, professional experience, anything like that. And then I really started to think about that recently. A lot of my students, like my tarot students, they've set up their own businesses, or even a lot of them have become students like themselves. And they relate to me quite a lot. Do you know, like they relate to like my story and things because they've had quite similar backgrounds or things that had like held them back, disabilities and stuff like that. So they sort of relate to me that way. So they wanted to learn like business from me because I'd sort of started at the bottom. Do you know what I mean? And they wanted to learn business from someone that had started at the bottom as well. So that's why I'd decided to develop my business program for that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, of course, we have associations which try to make people more aware of a code of ethics and stuff. But I wonder whether tarot readers, especially not so much oracle card readers, tried too hard during the late 90s, beginning of the 21st century to be highbrow.
You still see that. You still see that now. That still goes on now. That's not something that that used to happen. That's definitely something that goes on now. But I think that because of like the social justice movement and things like that, people are a lot more careful with the things that they say and how they word it. Do you know? Whereas there's people that I met when I was like 8 years ago, and I can remember.
You look.
I can remember the way that they were wording things back then. And I actually feel like I feel like a lot of the times, right, people are appreciated more for their achievements outside of tarot than the things sometimes that they are inside like tarot. Like sometimes I feel like a lot of people that have careers outside tarot are like, say if they're like I don't know, lawyers or something outside of tarot, they're held up on this pedestal as an example of the way that tarot readers should be. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, no, like they're no better than what I am. Do you know what I mean? If anything, like a lot of readers that are down in the trenches are the ones that have all of the experience. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, why should they not be asked about certain things? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I feel like, and I especially notice this more so like with women, right? This sounds terrible, right? But I tend to notice it more so with women. I think that people respect men that build themselves up from the bottom. Do you know what I mean? Like if a man has been expelled from school or a man like had bad qualifications and he becomes an entrepreneur, people view him differently than a woman who doesn't have any experience or was down in the trenches. Do you know what I mean? I feel like men get more respect if they've been expelled from school or things like that. Do you know what I mean? They're sort of on this pedestal as like a man that like, he doesn't listen to what anyone tells him, but he's still successful and stuff. Whereas I think that women sometimes are under pressure to prove their worth more. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I have to say, I never thought about what we're saying. There are also class differences in between readers. I never thought of this, but in Britain, I remember when I used to live there, the class thing I think is much stronger than in Germany. I'm not sure. I never think about classes. So
I think that as well is that there's a lot of readers that like to think of themselves in certain ways, right? So And then they think of seekers who are in a certain class in certain ways, right? Now, I can guarantee you, right, upper class people are going for predictive readings, right? They want to know if their ex is coming back just as much as the next person, if not more. Do you know what I mean? So they want to know those things as well. And I think that, like, honestly, back years ago, you used to get people writing blog posts like, only lower class people go for predictive readings, and you know what I mean, you tend not to get that as much now, because like I said, with like social justice and stuff like that, people are more likely to call folk out for views like that, whereas back 6, 7, 8 years ago, people weren't as keen. Do you know what I mean? So you do really see, and that's the thing, is that personally I don't really feel like, even though I've been in this industry for like 10 years, I don't really feel like I've been in it for that long. But when I think about the differences between people, the way that people would behave like back then towards now, I think that, yeah, I think that people still do hold those views, but they're not as vocal about them as what they used to be.
Perhaps also because you're quite successful or very successful, I mean, they will hold their tongue.
People treat me a lot differently now compared to how they did. Like back when I'd first started, when I first came online, I used to have a Facebook page, and readers who had came across me in like Facebook groups would go on there and put like racial slurs on there and rate me 1 star and everything. It was really bad. And this was like a daily thing that used to go on, like completely destroyed my ratings and stuff like that. At one point I was actually considering giving up readings because I was constantly on edge over like people doing things like that, and it was just an absolute nightmare.
Wow. So you're absolutely predestined to build a course on this issue, because you can have probably great advice for people who are insecure.
Yeah.
So you said kind of there, or I said there might be a vocation calling you for doing the job. And you said you started with a blog and a Facebook group. And what would you people advise to start doing when they are determined not only to do readings in private, but to go public with this? What would be the first steps you suggest?
Well, I think that nowadays the best way to go about it is to make sure that if someone is Googling your area and psychic, that you're the person that's coming up top. Now, it doesn't even have to be like on Google, even if you have a Facebook page that's like Psychic Readings Edinburgh or whatever it is that in your area they would put in. It could be like fortune teller, it could be psychic, it could be anything like that, and have the location in the name. Do you know what I mean? So that people are a lot more likely to find you and then come to you, because 99% of people nowadays, they're quite lazy, and that tends to be how they find psychics, is through just a quick Google search or a Facebook search or something like that. So if I was to start again, I think that would be my priority. I think that I'd left it to, even though I'd started my blog like a year after I'd started professional reading, even that, I think that I'd left it too late. I should have really prioritized starting a website and starting a newsletter quite early on. And the thing is that I see a lot of readers that and even nowadays, is that it's so much easier to create a website using something like Squarespace. It's just super easy, whereas back years ago it wasn't that easy to create a website is what it is nowadays. Nowadays you can just do a drag and drop and stuff. But I see a lot of readers who, like, they say things like, oh, I can't afford the monthly fee or whatever, but then they're like kickstarting decks every month or stuff, like paying like £100. No, but I really, really do see that, like they're paying like £100 for the latest like tarot deck or whatever, but then they're not investing that money in their business or that. So I think that would probably be the place to start. But I think that if you're in the frame of mind as well that you have absolutely no money and you need somewhere to start, I would do 3 things. I would either work for a more quality phone-in psychic company. You know, there's quite really good ones in the UK that pay like really well. Or I would do, when everywhere opens back up, I would definitely do the fairs and stuff like that. And I would probably approach a mind, body, spirit shop about working in their shop as a reader. Those are 3 things that I would do if I was to get really scrappy, if I really had no money and I was like, right, I want to start making money straight away. because I think that once you do that, you can sort of start like building your online presence, using the money from that and invest it back into like your business and stuff.
Yeah,
So
that's
what I would
that's
do.
really good advice. I think this is quite important. And do you think a newsletter is very important?
Oh yeah, totally. The biggest mistake that I'd ever made, right, was Googling. It was like I think maybe it was I'm laughing, right, because I totally done this. I think it was like 2014, and I had the thought maybe I should get a newsletter, right? So I went online and I Googled, should I get a newsletter? And all of these articles from like 2010 it popped up, like years before it, right? And it was saying that, oh, because of social media now, you don't need a newsletter. So I was like, all right, I don't need a newsletter, right? And I totally regret it now. Like 99% of every penny that I make comes from my newsletter, like selling things in my newsletter. And it's because one thing that people don't understand is there's something called a conversion rate. Now, a conversion rate is the rate that people convert at. So, or buy something. So say if you put an advert on your newsletter, buy my reading, right? Statistically, 1 to 2%, sometimes up to 5% of people who read that newsletter will buy your reading, right? That's the conversion rate of an email. But social media, it's only something like 0.02% of your followers ever convert on social media. And a lot of people don't realize that. So you basically need something like 200 times the amount of followers on social media is what you do through a newsletter. So you're as well as having the newsletter, do you know what I mean? Because otherwise you're just building into this bottomless pit of social media. And I was totally didn't believe that, you know, like years ago, I was like, I'm too young for a newsletter, like newsletters are for old people. And that, I used to tell myself all this crazy stuff, right? I really wish that's probably my biggest mistake, was not having a newsletter early on. Totally wish I would have, even just to keep in touch with like my past clients, you know, if I was emailing them regularly, then they would have been more likely to come back for a reading, do you know what I mean? But I think that we'd sort of lost touch. I'd lost touch with a lot of my clients and things just naturally over time as well. And I think that I should really have had a newsletter. It's definitely one of my biggest regrets.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, as I said, I personally I keep reading newsletters, and I don't look so much on Facebook because it there is no interaction, and I really go back to ordering newsletters instead of saying a fan of whatever. So I can understand this. Yeah, but it's really a lot of work. I think I should discipline myself more.
I think that it is a lot of work, right? But here's the thing, is that it gets easier, right? It gets so much easier as time goes on, and you can literally write them in your sleep if you get used to writing them. Do you know what I mean? You can just get writing them and stuff like that. And even that, one thing that really holds people back, I think, is people are really afraid to send out newsletters because it feels like something that's really personal. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes you can really suffer with that. Do people want to hear from me? Like blah blah blah. Yeah. But then you need to realize that your biggest fan could be on the other end of that newsletter. Do you know what I mean? You will literally meet people. If you're sending out newsletters, you will literally meet people, and people will come up to you and say, I read your newsletter and I love it. And you'll probably be like, do you know what I mean? But that doesn't happen unless you get into the groove of writing your newsletters, and you're doing them a disservice, right? If you have something that they're interested in, information that they really want to know about or whatever, they're learning from you. Do you know what I mean? You're doing them a disservice by not sending them their newsletter. They sign up because they're interested. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I can understand this, and this is always my worry that I don't want to bother people too much and whatever. And but you're quite right. You're the one person. Well, there are a few people, but I save your newsletters because I really like what the content of it. I have loads of them collected.
Yeah, I get that all the time, and I think that in our industry, I don't know a lot of people who send out newsletters. Do you know what I mean? But I do get that a lot. I get that so much. Even I've actually met people in real life, right? Just in say like in the local shop. We call it the centre, right? The local shop of my area. And I've actually met people who've came across my website online looking up tarot meanings, right? And then they've opted into my newsletter. And then I've met them out and about and they're like, I read your newsletter. And I'm like, it really freaks, like, you know, like my sisters and my daughter and stuff, it really freaks them out because they're like, oh, people are coming up to you. Do you know what I mean? But you have to view it in that they're signing up because they see something of value in what it is that you're sending them. Do you know what I mean? And they're looking forward to it. Do you know what I mean? So if you're not sending it to them. And another thing as well is that I think that people are actually more likely to get irritated with the less amount of newsletters that you send. So I'd actually done this experiment one time, and it was a couple of years ago, right? I think it was about 3 years ago, where I'd changed the frequency that I was sending newsletters, and I'd went, I think it was about, I used to email my subscribers like every week, right? Like clockwork every Tuesday. And 1 week I'd went, I think it was 3 weeks without sending the newsletter. And then all of these people unsubscribed, right? And it was like, I seemed to annoy people more the less that I was doing it. And then I would just pop up than what it was when they were getting them consistently. And it's like they were waiting on them and expecting them. Do you know what I mean? So the more consistent that you are with that, it becomes part of people's routine because then they look forward to reading them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of relate to this. So definitely a newsletter is very important for building your business. And you gave a few suggestions on what to do to get started. What will people learn in your course? It's starting in June and I think online, right?
Yeah. So my course is obviously it's 100% online because the coronavirus and stuff like that. One day my dream is to teach it in person, but it will be online. And right now, from the way that I have it now, it's going to be down in about 10 parts. And basically what it's going to teach is how to attract an audience and then how to capture that audience, say like in a newsletter or whatever, just by providing good content and then selling your services. So say like readings and stuff, or even if you have a course, you could sell courses, just whatever it is that you want to provide the person. It teaches you how to sell it instead of like say wasting your time posting on Facebook and not getting a response or anything like that. Because the thing was that when I first started my business, right, I just thought that I was just going to post in these Facebook groups and I would get business, and it totally didn't work out like that. It was so hard, do you know what I mean, to get business and stuff. And it wasn't until that I'd actually realized how to properly go about promoting myself and then gathering like subscribers and then pitching a product to them properly. It wasn't until that I'd actually learned how to do that I actually started to make money. Do you know what I mean? So it was just general good business practice. But I feel like anybody can teach business, but it takes a certain person to teach business in like the spiritual industry, because sometimes I feel like we're under a lot of pressure that other people aren't under. Like most people aren't, like hairdressers aren't getting like free reading requests in their inbox. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so yeah. I think they're probably getting something different, but that's for them. It's not for readers or tarot readers or anything like that. So I feel like we do have a lot of roadblocks in our industries and stuff that other people don't have in their industries, and especially with regards to confidence and executing our services, because a lot of tarot relies on confidence and things and relies on intuition. You have to be confident enough to perform readings and then give your intuitive impressions and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And not being able to do that can cause all of these other issues. So I feel like confidence in being able to sell your readings and confidence in even just going into your readings is very important. But a lot of that is to do with mindset and stuff. So there is a part of the course where I do sort of talk about mindset and things like that, just to get people into the right frame of mind to be able to sell their services properly.
And that's very good, because I find this too, that spiritual people, they have also the feeling they're not allowed to take money for what they're doing, but they also get people tell them, why do you take money for whatever? And it's quite tough to find yourself in this and stick to your price or whatever. So yeah.
I I had actually interviewed about 1,000 diviners.
Mhm.
Well, I had them fill out a survey, and about 1,000 of them done it. And only 3% of those actually believed that it was wrong for accepting payment for readings. But those people that believed that were very vocal about it. Do you know what I mean? So they're in the minority, but they've got a big mouth. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes that can really affect people's confidence and stuff like that, because it can plant ideas in their heads if they've sort of have doubt over what they're doing any road. Do you know what I mean? And I think that sometimes they need someone there to tell them, like, listen, you're doing the right thing. This is your destiny. Don't even worry about things like that. And I think sometimes as well is that a lot of readers feel like they should maybe not charge too much for their readings and stuff like that, and they're not really sure what an acceptable price for a reading is, or how they're not confident in that they'll find people that will pay more for a reading or whatever as well. And I feel like that's an industry-wide problem. So I feel like that's another thing that I feel like the whole money and tarot issue is something that it plays out in lots of different ways. Do you know what I mean? It's not just that people worry that it's wrong to accept money for readings. It's the fact that they're worried about, well, how much is acceptable and how much are people willing to pay. And do you know what I mean? Am I wrong for charging a price that sustains my lifestyle or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Or should I be making more money than my sister, who I love my job but she hates her job? Do you know? And that's another thing that can really start to play out in people's minds as well.
Yeah, I can understand this. Perhaps I'm not sure. Musina from India, hi Musina, is asking what you think about karmic. I don't know whether she relates this to earning money.
I don't really know what she would mean by that.
Yeah,
you need to clarify.
Yeah, Musina, if you want to clarify, perhaps we can give you an answer. But like this, it's a bit difficult to answer, because karmic is a huge topic, isn't it? No, yeah, she says yes. So she means about karma in relation to money earning.
I think that you could ask that to anyone. Like if I went to Asda, right, and I wanted to buy a TV, right? Say I went to Asda and I wanted to buy a TV, I could say to someone, how do you feel about the karma of me just taking this TV and not giving you money? Like, do you know what I mean? I think that you could really say that about pretty much anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you can say that about pretty much anything. So I feel like when people attach that to readings, I want to ask them why they feel like that about readings, but they wouldn't necessarily feel that about other things. And sometimes I've actually found that readers in particular, they use these people in all industries, right? People in all industries have mindset problems around money, right? But for readers, I think that sometimes they can sort of use this way of thinking as a way to justify the fact that they're uncomfortable for accepting money with something that they're happy about. Do you know what I mean? And I never actually realized this until I'd met like other business people, and I shared with them that I felt a bit weird sometimes whenever I was performing a professional reading or whatever. And then they told me, well, I feel weird when I accept money for a haircut. Do you know what I mean? And they found all these really strange ways to justify why it was that they felt that way. Do you know what I mean? And I think that in our industry, we find all of these ways that we can sort of say, well, maybe it's wrong because of like karma, or maybe it's wrong because of like this or that, when really it's just a mindset issue, that all professionals have that mindset issue. Do you know what I mean? And it's something that needs worked on in itself. It's not necessarily something within tarot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Musina says that in India they have to pay, otherwise it will be karmic. So
my people believe that as well. But Romani people originally came from India, and we believe that it's unlucky to give someone something without accepting something else in return.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Even if like one person will say, like my granny, right? She'll go down the street. I'll go down the street for her, and I'll buy her bread, and I'll come up the road, and she'll be like, take this £1 for this bread. And I'll say, no, it's all right. And then she's like, no, take it. you have to take it. She'll be like so adamant about me taking it. And then I think that it's this fear that if it's not balanced in a way, that something else might be taken from you. God knows, but I think that that's sort of why. And we sort of view anything the same, like any service, and it's not just readings, it's any service. If someone performs a service, the other person has to pay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they might lose something else out of their life. Do you know what I mean? To sort of balance the scales, kind of thing.
Yeah, I love this attitude. It's a great attitude.
But honestly, and that's what I'm saying, is that I feel like a lot of these mindset issues around money isn't really as much related to the belief that it's wrong to take money for readings, because my culture don't believe that. But I still had these mindset issues around money. Do you know what I mean? I think in some ways it's probably like more human nature or your experiences. Or for me, right, this is the one thing that I really think that my issues, how when I was first performing readings, I found it quite awkward to accept money for readings. And what I think that it stems from was that my entire family, up until my generation, had worked in fields, right? Like earning pennies every day, 18 hours a day in the blazing sun, picking taters, picking hops, picking whatever, right? And we were the first generation that never done that. And my family used to always say to us things like, be grateful you're not in the field. Like, do you know what I mean? Be grateful you're not doing that. And I think that in my head, I think that sort of gave me this impression that money was really hard to come by, right? So if you're doing something that you enjoy, when I started to do something that I enjoyed, I found it awkward accepting money for it, because to me, and my mindset was, money doesn't come easy, so I've not earned this money because I enjoyed this reason. Do you know what I mean? That's really bizarre. But I think that a lot of people's mindset issues can be traced back to things in their childhood that they're not really. And it was really hard for me to accept that that's where my mindset issues had came from. But once I'd accepted it, then it became a lot easier for me to accept money, because I'd be like, just because I enjoy what I do doesn't mean that I don't deserve to be paid for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally understand this. But on the other hand, I often have people coming to me and they really haggle about the price. But they will tell me about which house they want to buy or whatever. And I go like, okay, so my qualification is not worth something. I think this is also...
Free reading requests always come from iPhones, right? People send you a free reading request from an iPhone, right? And this is the thing, is that sometimes, right, from a spiritual perspective, sometimes I think that these people are sent to test you. Do you know what I mean? They're just sent to test you. They're like, how much do you want this? I'm going to send this person and make sure your boundaries are all right. And I found that when my boundaries were really bad, I would get these people nonstop. It's like they could sense it. Do you know what I mean? They could sense it. And then once I got used to saying no, it was, for some reason, they all evaporated. It's like they disappeared. It's like, do you know what I mean? I do, even nowadays, right, I do get the odd one that will pop up, even like in my teachings, right? Because now I teach full time, right? I run courses and things full time. And now I will get people pop up and they'll be like, oh, give me a free course or whatever. But what I do is that I remind myself that my students have paid for that. Do you know what I mean? That's what I do. Or they'll want a discount, and I'll say my students who are loyal to me, who've done the course, who really enjoy the course and put the work in and the effort in, they've paid for it. And it's unfair on them. It's unfair on my current students if I just give this person a discount, or if I give this and that makes it a lot easier to say no. Once you build a relationship with your like regular clients and stuff, you don't want to do them a disservice, because you want it to be fair for everyone. You want everyone to get the same price. And that's how I view it now. I wish that I would have viewed it like that back then. Do you know what I mean? Because some of my seekers were really, really good. I would see them regularly and all that. Do you know what I mean? But then I would get the odd person in my inbox begging for a free reading, and I just felt bad. But once I said no, it became a lot easier. I got less and less and less of them.
I guess this is something we all need to learn when we're doing this business. And I think from what we are talking here about, you are very qualified to do such a course. I really like your attitude. I'm sure people will enjoy it. When do you get started with the course?
In June. The reason why I'm starting in June is that because I still have my tarot students who are still working their ways through like their courses and stuff. So I'm going to start my course in June basically. But
Okay.
it'll be absolutely, I'll be posting about it everywhere and stuff like
that. In your newsletter, I guess.
Oh yeah, honestly, this is the thing, right? When I'm promoting a course, people get so weird about posting their newsletters, but take this, right? So I was promoting my tarot course about a couple of weeks ago, right? And I posted about it to my newsletter every day. And on the last day, twice a day, right? So I was really posting. Now, most people don't have the balls to do that, but I was really doing it, right? And I was like, I'm going to make sure that people know this course isn't running again till next year, right? Because I'm not teaching tarot again till next year. So I need to make sure that everyone who wants to enroll will enroll, right? And would you believe it? I would say maybe about 24 people were emailing me ever since the end date. I never knew that you were doing this course. People on my newsletter, they're like, oh, I didn't open your newsletter. And I'm like, I emailed you every day, sometimes like 3 times a day. I was talking about it for months. Do you know what I mean?
I managed to realize that you're doing this.
Yeah. But that's what I mean, is that people get so much in their own business, right? That they're like, oh, everyone is reading this newsletter and everyone's going to judge me. People don't care that much. People are wrapped up in their own business. Do you know what I mean? People are so wrapped up in their own business that they need to be told that every day for weeks to know that the launch is happening. Do you know what I mean? And honestly, I rarely get people complaining about my newsletter. Like, I rarely get people that are like, I don't think actually I've ever had an email where someone says you've emailed me too much. I don't think I've ever had that, ever.
Well, then they unsubscribe if they think it's too much.
But a lot of the time, people that unsubscribe actually resubscribe at a later date. So they have their reasons for whatever it is. Sometimes people actually use like a cleanup software that unsubscribes for them. And then later on they realize and then they like resubscribe and stuff like that. So people that have joined your newsletter once are a lot more likely to join it again in the future, just for whatever reason they've unsubscribed. So
well, interesting. Anyway, I think we should come to a close.
Oh yeah, because I would talk to you all day, seriously.
Yeah, I love talking to you as well, but my son has popped up several times, and
Did you hear my daughter walking past?
No, I was focused on your 100%.
I noticed that your son had came in because I noticed you looking, and I thought her son's coming in. Did they know? You won't see her, but she actually walked past, and I'd looked at her, and I noticed the way that you were looking to the side. I thought she's looking at her son, because I was looking at Candice when she walked past.
Well, I think we should do a second time sometime later in the year, because you have really so much to tell, and as I said, I really like your attitude. I learned from this session that I will take more care with my newsletter. And I can only advise everybody who's watching now or later that please subscribe to the newsletter and learn. And you have a very, you are all over the place, but you do it in a very unobtrusive way, and I really appreciate this. So sometimes it's even hard to get in touch with you after. I'm
more on it now. Definitely, I'm definitely more on it now.
Yeah. So some people have left comments. Mosina, Reiki healing, I think, is not the issue today. So let's perhaps come to a close. But I will say what I have to say about Reiki healing later in a comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's
fine. And we two meet up again, and everybody else, I hope you enjoyed the talk and want to see Lisa back again as much as I. So yeah, let's keep in touch, Lisa. And I know Instagram is good for being in touch with you now. I learned this. I'm not an Instagrammer. It's really difficult for me. I'm an old-fashioned.
I'm not that into it. I just really go on there to be nosy. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do our best, and people are saying goodbye and thank you. And I will play my extra in a moment, and I'm back next week on next Saturday. I'm back with Nancy. Atonency. I can't pronounce her surname. Sorry?
Ananichi.
Yeah. Yeah. She's talking about ancestries and tarot. It's going to be interesting as well.
Oh yeah, she's brilliant. You should watch her, by the way, because she's brilliant. Actually,
Yeah.
like
I talked to her.
There's a lot of people in Tarot I don't really like, but she's one of the ones that
she's extremely cute. Well, cute is not the word, but I talked to her half a year ago or so. No, 3 months ago, and she's very, very great person. So it's going to be fun. It was a lot of fun with you, Lisa. And as I said, we keep in touch. Yeah, have a great time out there. And yes, whenever, come back, join us, like Lisa's side, whatever. Oh, I need to go to my son. Okay. My love to your daughter and to everybody else out there.
Okay, right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Yeah, I have to